basement. Level vibes with another one. Straight up. Blackness, aye. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating everybody. Big up my friends and big up my family. Turn on the radio, catch the vibes, it's integrity. Straight up, Benskop stands for unity. One people, one nation, one destiny. Free up the truth in the air, even the blind can see. The deaf can hear, the dumb can talk, the cripple can walk. Boom. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, we have to gather wrong, grab a seat and sit down, pay attention. Education, liberation, we have to stand strong. Benskop upon the radio, lively up the program. Everybody call somebody and let them turn and tune and pon the radio and catch the boom song. We boom it up already, we have to boom it up again. Expose and reveal him. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating everybody. Big up my friends and big up me.
Hello, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
All right, hey, guess what? Good evening. Slight technical, not technical Facebook issue at this end. It has been rectified, I think. So we are here. So good evening to all of you. This right here, Aubrey Norton is in North America. In fact, he's in the United States of America. We just say welcome to the leader of the opposition. He's here to talk and then talk and then talk. And lots of talking he's doing in the U.S. On Thursday, which is the 24th of August, of course, in Queens, Starlight Pavilion in Queens. They're located 130-05-101 First Avenue, Jamaica. First Avenue. If you have any question, any information that you need, call 347 683 2598. Give them this plug here. But this is why I'm putting it up here in the heart of Queens. And the guys in Queens are going bonkers. They're going crazy. They want to protest. And so, look, for those of you who aren't doing anything on Thursday, head out there. Where is it? Starlight Pavilion in Queens. And if they want to protest, well, you can attend the meeting and you can come to protest them and just set the record straight with those guys out in Queens, right? Yeah, set the record straight. Let people know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Good evening to all of you. My name is, again, Mark Benchop. Welcome to Straight Up. Thank you all for sharing the link. We don't hesitate. We rock and roll right off the bat. This is the installed president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. I don't know. Well, the one in front, then there's his shadow at the back. I don't know what is going on here at all, but this here is an embarrassment, not because of the different compartments on the stomach you're seeing, level 1, level 2, level 3. We're not talking about that. I don't know. I don't know what's happening in Guyana. If you ask me, sorry. Sorry about that, guys. We told the operator to put the Mr. Irfan Ali's photograph up. There seemed to be some sort of a mix-up. Again, I'm saying that there seemed to be some sort of a mix-up, and so it is indeed a mix-up, mind you. We don't want people to mistake anything for anything, but it is what it is. My name is Mark Benchad. Good evening again, and welcome to Straight Up on 107.1 FM. Where shall we begin? Where shall we begin here? Let me say Trinidad and Tobago. They have a street name after their country, their islands, Trinidad and Tobago, 131st Street out there in Queens. Congratulations. Everybody's getting a street. Everybody's getting a long stretch name after their country. What's going on with Guyana? Why? I mean, somewhere in Brooklyn should be named Guyana Boulevard, Guyana Avenue, whatever it is, it should be the case. Brooklyn, what's going on, guys? What's going on? Too much pulling and tugging and who this and who that. Come on, guys. Get your acts together, right? In Brooklyn, New York. And quickly, look at what's happening here. Pressure mounts on opposition MPs to pay costs after losing court case. The corrupt PPP regime wants these guys to pay up. Shara Duncan got to pay up. Christopher Jones got to pay up. All of them got to pay up. Natasha Singh Lewis got to pay up. Annette Ferguson, poor Annette. Well, Annette won a couple of cases, so she should have enough money to pay up. But where Vince Troy gonna get money to pay up? Where Sabato Haley, Sarabo Sari? Of all poor, where is Ganesh? Poor Ganesh. Ganesh might go sell mitai and dongs and polori. But where, Maureen, Philadelphia, where are they going to get the money to pay up? Now, on a serious level, though, you have foreign companies milking the country with billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of millions, you name it, all manner of things, duty-free concessions. They're not paying taxes, anything, but you want to squeeze a living daylight out of these MPs? I don't know. I really don't know what's happening. But let's get straight to our guest this evening. We have with us, no stranger, he's back with us. Something tells me that he wants to take over this show. Something tells me that he wants to pull a coup on this show. Something tells me that he wants to overthrow me from this show. But we're going to get back to that shortly. Wayne Caesar, good evening to you, sir. Derek Arjun, good evening to you, sir. How are you gentlemen doing? Wayne?
Good evening, Mark. Good evening to all our listeners and viewers, freedom fighters out there. Let's rock and roll. I'm doing fine, Mark.
Yeah. So there's no truth there that you want to overthrow me from this show, right?
Absolutely not, Mark. Absolutely not.
I ask you that question because it's the same way the opposition, when they were in office, Carl Miller, let's focus on what we have to focus on, sir. Please. Thank you. Appreciate it. Don't be too redundant. Let's stay focused. Now, and I say this here because during the coalition time, they went to Charandas and asked Charandas the same question. They said to Charandas, are you going to vote against us in a no confidence motion? Charandas said, no, man, I would never do that. I would never do that. So your response to me just now, kind of reminiscent of what Charandas did to them, and he dig it in them. I'm watching you, Mr. Caesar. I'm watching you and all of your supporters out there, including Conrad August and all of them. Mr. Derek Arjun, good evening to you, sir. How are you doing?
Quite well, Mark, and good evening to you, good evening to Wayne Caesar, and good evening to all your listeners. It's indeed a pleasure being here.
You know, you've been in the legal field for probably 100 and something years. Looking at the body language of a Wayne Caesar when he said no, he would never do that. Do you believe him, sir?
I would prefer not to enter into that fray. Um, I believe Mr. Caesar means well, and I think you could trust him.
I got you. Got you, Mr. Derek Arjun. Good evening again, and this is his first time on the show. Welcome to Straight Up on 107.1 FM. Later down in the show, Mr. Arjun will be talking about this event out there in Queens. The leader of the opposition Aubrey Norton, that is, has a town hall meeting in Queens, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., August 24th. That is Thursday. This coming Thursday at Starlight Pavilion in Queens, in the heart of Queens. Mr. Derek Arjun will talk to us a little bit about that. But let's get right off the top. Since Derek Arjun, this is his first time here on 107.1 FM. Touch on this here, please, Mr. Arjun. Pressure mounts on opposition MPs to pay cost after losing court case. How vindictive you think the PPP is with this?
Well, isn't it consistent with the way the PPP operates? It's constantly looking to exact some kind of sanction on those who oppose it. These MPs sought to vindicate a position that they believed in. They went to court, and unfortunately, the decision didn't go in their favor. Well, why is it so necessary to get those costs? As you pointed out, we're losing lots of money. And here it is, we're going after 8 persons who are serving our people and seeking money. It seems reasonable that we should be pursuing others and not these MPs who are doing an excellent job in representing Guyanese in Parliament and outside of Parliament. So it's consistent with the PPP wanting to dominate and wanting to drive fear into those who don't agree with their agenda.
Well said. Derek Arjun there for it. I've noticed some people are picking on Francine. Good evening to Francine and the others there at the Long Island Nursing Home. Heard that they have some issues there, but Francine is saying overthrow is the order of the day. So people are agreeing with Mr. Wayne Caesar to overthrow me from this show. You guys going to deal with Francine in the comment section. I will have nothing more to say to Francine and about Francine. Mr. Wayne Caesar, you know it's a little bit of humor. We know we appreciate everything that you do here on 107.1 FM. What is your take, Mr. Caesar, on pressure mounts and opposition to pay for MPs to pay cost? How petty could the PPP be, sir?
Well, listen, Mark, when you have a government sitting there that does not want to be challenged in any way or form, you know, and the opposition know that there would be ramifications, that they would put, ramifications in place this way to deter them not to challenge anything. Because, Mark, how, if you're not confident after, losing this case here, if you're not confident, you're going to think twice, about taking the government to court because you know what the ramifications is. They're going to ask you to pay the cost. This here is absolutely unfair. We've never seen during the David Granger era that the PPPC was ever asked to pay any cost for anything. and they didn't have much cases anyway. They didn't have anything that they could have really take the opposition to court on, because they were doing the job and they were doing it properly. You see, this government, Mark, seek to dismiss any attempt by anyone to go against anything or any order that they put in place. They must go unchecked. And listen, we are refusing that. This government must be checked from top to bottom. That's the order of the day. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wayne Caesar. Good evening to all of you beautiful people watching this show. I hope you had a great weekend. All of you, every single one of you. Such a teaser. Miss Booker, and all of you guys, Tony Hack and the whole crew, good evening. I hope you guys who are in Queens or in Brooklyn are going to go down on Thursday to this event. Go down there. Here's why I'm asking you guys to go down there. Don't let the PPP, the PPP folks in Queens feel that they could threaten people with protest and they're going to go out there. They don't even show a face. They don't know the name. The names of the individuals, but they have a wacky flyer that they're circulating on social media. That is how much of a pussycat they are. They can't put their names or anything. Look, if they're going to have a protest anywhere, I would say protest against the PPP. I will go down there. But these guys, and some of those guys in Queens are pussycats. They're not showing their faces or anything. But let's move away from that for a moment. Let's head back to this here now. Here is what Jack Dale, he's still there. He's not really that relevant, mocking himself, mocking and jumping all over the place like a Moko Jumbi. Here is what Jack Dale, the dictator, sorry, don't misinterpret me, but it could be even if you do misinterpret me. It says here, how can I ever debate a Norton? Jack Dale says we'll be forced to educate rather than debate the opposition leader. Utter nonsense. What is wrong with Jack Deere? Jack Deere doesn't have what it takes to debate, not even a 3-year-old child. He doesn't have what it takes. He probably could be locked in a room and he and Kwame can debate each other. Or I would even bet my last dollar that even Francine that made that comment just now could beat Jack Deere in a debate. Mr. Arjun, let's get right back to you. What sort of silly statement is this coming from a guy who is supposed to be some sort of top official in the installed regime?
Well, isn't that what Jack Dio and the PvP do on a regular basis? They embrace this viewpoint that we know it all. We know what's best to Guyana, and we know what Guyana needs. Hence, an Aubrey Norton and others in opposition cannot offer any viewpoint, any policy, any program that we ought to listen to. But, there's something that is troubling in our politics for the last 15, 20 years during the reign or rulership of the PPP. And that is an unwillingness to listen and accommodate opposing points of view. Jagdio's statement there is a result of unfounded hubris, and he has nothing in his tenure to show that he has to educate Aubrey Norton, who is a well-spoken, well-read, and someone who understands Guyana. But that is what Jack Dio will say. And to the detriment of Guyana, the PPP runs the country in such a way to shut out everyone. Why? And this is my firm view for a long time. The PPP, led by Jack Dio, masquerades as a democratic party. At its core, it's a Stalinist communist party. And therefore, shutting out a Norton or anyone else is in keeping with its core beliefs. It doesn't matter who you are. Once you're not with them, then you have nothing of merit to say. When you look among the ranks, you look at Kwame, you look at Dharmlal, who hopefully is gone. Um, you see persons who lack the ability, first of all, to be in parliament, in my humble opinion, and secondly, who don't have the wherewithal to make meaningful contributions to the development of the country, but they have them there. They're okay. But anyone on the opposition, anyone outside of their way of thinking is unqualified. I remember Jack Doe saying about Aubrey Norton that he had held no substantial position prior to being elected leader, and therefore he couldn't see how he could offer anything to the leadership of the opposition. Well, utter nonsense. I mean, Aubrey Norton has been in the PNC since he was 14, 15. He has always applied himself. He went on to university. He's someone that is constantly trying to better his intellectual self. Um, he's not arrogant. He's approachable. He listens. So to say that how could he debate Norton is just to reject the idea that anyone in the opposition, more particularly its leader, has the wherewithal to stand up and talk to him. And one other point I would like to make.
Sure.
Guyana is in a bad place with respect to freedom of speech. We say we want to develop a country where all Guyanese can enjoy the fundamental rights that are enshrined in our Constitution. But then we do the opposite. And it starts in Parliament, where the Speaker unjustifiably shuts out the opposition. And then it goes out to the radio stations, it goes out to public gatherings, it goes out to what the police do to detractors of the government. We say we want to build a democratic, inclusionary, prosperous Guyana. But they're all words, they're all platitudes. If we want to do this, we have to do it sincerely. And of course, persons in response will say, look, we want to remain in power. We're not going to give them a chance. It's okay to shut them out and shut them down. But it is not going to succeed. This is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multi-ideological society. And you have to give people a chance to express themselves. So while Jack Dio and his kind might be basking in the belief that we're getting some over and we're increasing our electoral chances, they are so alienating people that it will never succeed. And that warning goes to us also. We have to involve Guyanese because of the nature of the society, the diversity of the society. And when we look at history, we see the societies that allow its people to say, write, and do things consistent with their fundamental freedoms tend to succeed. Our presence in the United States stands as testimony to that particular principle.
All right, Derek Arjun there. Well said. Good evening to all of you if you're now joining us. Wayne, what is your thought? What is your take on this here? I think Jack Deere should really, I would, even if Jack Deere were to debate a Conrad August, And you know, people beat Conrad August in almost everything, from hopscotch to everything. But even Conrad August could put a beating on Jack Deere. What is your take, please, sir, on this nonsense coming from Jack Deere?
Well, listen, Mark, first of all, this is a cop out because to be honest with you, I don't think that Jack Deere really wants to debate the comrade leader. But he says, you know, if he debates him, right, he's going to be educating him. Well, let's make some things straight here. Starting off, Aubrey Norton is an academic. Okay, he's not a fake economist. Okay, Barry Jack Deere is not an economist. Let's get that straight. Okay, and his little inferior degree that he would have earned in Russia has done absolutely nothing for Guyana. Okay, he's had Guyana on his thumbs around 30 years now. And where have we progressed as a country? So, Mark, there is no grounds, just based on the little that I would have just said there is no real grounds for any debate there. Okay, he'll be chewed up and
All right, we seem to have lost.
country, how our country would have failed. That's the questions. Questions on how our country would have failed and continues to fail. Because although they have us up there as one of the fastest growing economy, you're not seeing that at the ground level when it comes to the normal everyday Guyanese. You know, they continue to live in poverty. They continue to live in a Guyana with high inflation. They continue to live in Guyana where they're being marginalized because they're not supporting the PPPC. So there is no grounds whatsoever, Mark, for any debate between Mr. Norton and the fake economist, Barry Jack Deere.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Caesar. Appreciate it. It's 31 minutes after 9 o'clock on this beautiful Monday evening, the 21st day of August. The year is almost completed. When we look around at the discrimination under the PPP regime, someone brought this to my attention and said that the installed PPP regime, they actually have something that they call free training heavy duty equipment operator. And when you look at the areas, Mr. Arjun and Caesar, Regional Democratic Council of Region 6, Corriverton Town Council, Upper Quarantine Industrial Trading Center, Meda, Tarlagy, NDC. Oh, I'm familiar with that area. Meda, Kilmarnock, Philippi, Cromarty, Wellington Park, Tarlagy. Good. So I have an idea why they're doing that there too. Number 63, 74 NDC, Crabble Creek, Molson Creek, Good Hope, Macedonia, Japa NDC, Bushland Adventure, that's quarantine. Number 5262 NDC, and Black Bush Polder NDC. I mean, the point that I'm making with these areas, our listeners, members in the audience already know where I'm coming from. Mr. Arjun, the discrimination, the obvious discrimination in Guyana is rampant. It is blatant under the PPP regime. Your take, sir?
Yes, it is, and it's continued to draw a divide in our nation and retarding tremendously the progress of the country. But you know, there's this theory that we empower our supporters, empower our voters, and we are assured of being in power for the longest period of time. What that reasoning fails to recognize is that the main victims of that discrimination, African Guyanese, they will not stand for this for a long time. I mean, the pushback has started. There are fora, there are symposiums, there are marches, there are talks. And, you know, eventually, though we might be impatient about what might happen if people in a so-called democratic society do not have the means to find redress for their grievances, especially blatant grievances. There are going to be disruptions. It's inevitable. But the PPP doesn't understand or refuses to understand. You know, one of the seductive things, about having power is that you believe it's permanent. You have the economic power, you have the police and army supposedly behind you. What the PPP doesn't realize is that, yes, you have some persons in those uh, security forces, and you certainly have elements in the economic segment who support you. But there is rampant and uncontrollable discrimination. And many of those persons are parts of the society. While they might not voice to you their dislike, their discontent, they are seething with rage, with anger, with frustration, and at some point, without an outlet, you might have activities that are not in keeping with what we call democratic norms. But democracy demands that people stand up. If your government is not doing what it is supposed to do, then you must stand up. And I remember the saying that a people of sheep will soon beget a government of wolves. And the more Guyanese continue to be sheepish towards what the PPP is doing, and the more the PPP gets confidence that it can continue trampling on the rights of Guyanese, particularly African Guyanese, is more likely that we're going to have an unhealthy and sustained disruption to what is going on.
Well said, Derek Arjun, there for you guys. 36 minutes after 9 o'clock. If you're now joining us, welcome to the show. Mr. Wayne sees a obvious blatant discrimination by the PPP regime, discrimination in every form. How do we overcome the blatant discrimination, sir, particularly against persons of African descent and those who do not support the PPP?
Well, listen, Mark, it's very, very simple here, but I'm going to just start off based on what you would have just had on the screen there. We look across all those villages, all those targeted areas of the PPPC to have this free heavy duty equipment operator training conducted. You would have seen that these areas are not predominantly, not even to say, out of the listed areas here, we have at least three that are predominantly Afro-Guyanese, or let's say one of the villages that were bought by our ancestors, just to stand out a bit. It just shows how classless this government is, and they have no strategy in anything that they do. Okay, they're trying to move away a bit from sugar. They're not saying it directly, but here it is that they're providing trainings so that they can have, the young people in these communities go out and get these trainings, and ultimately they'll go there and work for one of those big financiers that are, coming in and financing across Guyana. So jobs are being provided for their faction of the country. Yes, because there are two factions here. There's a faction that the PPPC is taking care of, which is the people they believe would have voted for them, right? They're taking care of them. But then the other faction now, when we look at the people that support the opposition, Mark, nothing is not being done on that end, you understand me, to aid those people when it comes to their day-to-day. There's no trainings provided. There's no proper technical institutes. There are nothing provided for those people. And Mark, when we look at a government when a government is elected, right? There's no, oh, this person voted for me, this person did not. A government is supposed to be a government for all. Okay, this government, we know it's installed, Mark. We know this, but still they're responsible for executing their mandate to the people. And when I say the people, I mean all the people, not a faction that would have voted for you. So the government continues their marginalization, their ill treatment, okay, and the unequitable distribution of everything from wealth to job opportunities. Everything continues to be unequitable. That's why, Mark, you're able to see certain people become rich and become wealthy in Guyana, while certain, and I'll just use it, ethnic groups continues to be poor because they're not given those opportunities. Shame on the government. Over
Absolutely. To you. Thank you so much. Shame on the government. They installed PB regime. They have no shame, none whatsoever. We're joined by attorney at law, Shalon Washington. Ms. Washington, good evening to you. How are you?
Good evening, and good evening to everyone else. Good evening to all the listener. I'm well, thank you for asking.
We were just talking about, Wayne just commented, and so did Mr. Derek Arjun, commented on the blatant racial discrimination by the PPP regime, the installed PPP regime. And we just give an example of these areas, predominantly one ethnic group, East Indian areas. Pretty obvious that they're having these free training of heavy duty equipment operator. Why couldn't this be across the board, as Wayne Caesar just said? Why couldn't we see this in Linden? Linden, they have a lot of heavy duty equipment operating in Linden, in Ituni, in Kokwani, and those areas. Those guys, take for example in Madhya Talerji area, they hardly have those guys who operate in these things. One would have thought that areas like I've mentioned, such as Linden, Ituni, Kokwani, and those areas there, but nothing for them at all. Blatant discrimination by the installed PPP regime. Ms. Washington, your take, please.
That's very true, Mark, because, in Linden, there's the Bauxite Company, and they use a lot of heavy duty equipment, and they do require operators for those equipment from time to time. And, in the interior in particular, there's a lot of heavy duty equipment used in the mining industry. So one would have imagined that the PPP would train people across the board and not just limit the training to a specific ethnic group. And, we continue to see the PPP operate unilateral to the exclusion of one race, or other races, I should say, because this doesn't go towards Afro-Guyanese only. So the Amerindian Guyanese cannot just sit idly by and say, well, this doesn't affect us, because it does affect them also, because some of the areas where heavy duty equipments are typically used are heavily populated by either Afro-Guyanese or Amerindian indigenous Guyanese. So it would affect other ethnic groups other than ourselves. And I think it's very shameful and it's embarrassing that the PPP continuously operate a government which is unilateral, which is one-sided. It's just suitable for East Indian Guyanese, and they forget and disregard all of the contributions, all of the efforts, all of the sacrifices that Afro-Guyanese has personally made towards the existence or the independence of our nation. And I think things are happening. You look around and we see things are happening around the world, and African people are rising up. We look and we see what's happening in Africa, and you never know what is going to transcend to Guyana, because the Afro-Guyanese sacrificed a lot for that country. Some of them lost their lives for the freedom of that country. And I do not agree with any politics that would marginalize a particular group, would marginalize Afro-Guyanese who sacrificed, and a lot of them made the ultimate sacrifice, which is their life for that nation. We ought to be offered a front row seat We ought to be offered a seat at the table because that country is also our country. And I dare anybody to come and just marginalize and put Afro-Guyanese aside because there is a revolution taking place. If people are waking up and recognizing around the world, there's a revolution, and African people all over the globe, they're saying we are not going to sit by and take the treatment that we've been receiving for so many years. We've been discriminated against, we've been trampled against, and we're rising up now. So if the government wants to continue in that direction, they're going to get a rude awakening because a revolution is taking place and it's spreading gradually.
Spreading gradually indeed.
Mark, if I may.
44 minutes after 9 o'clock, I noticed Mr. Arjun has something else he wants to add. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, Caesar touched on a sore point of mine for many, many years. When we talk about discrimination, perhaps the most blatant and troubling form of discrimination that has been occurring in Guyana for a very long time is the huge sums of money that the Guyanese government continues to inject into the sugar industry. The statistics are indisputable that we should have been out of sugar. Nonetheless, Jack Dio introduced the nearly 200 million plus Skeldon sugar factory, which wasn't operating. I'm not sure it's operating now. It might be because I know workers are there protesting for more pay. The other factories have not produced what they should. Recently, there's been talk about some meeting targets and exceeding, but they have not been operating efficiently. Yet, this government has continuously put our money into the sugar industry, knowing that it is not for increased and efficient production, but just for votes. And this matter is not for Afro and PNC or AFC supporters. It's for all Guyanese. The money that is allocated by Parliament on a consistent basis to the sugar industry is a waste of money. There's this pipe dream that they will revive the sugar industry on the Says Narayan Singh. It hasn't happened, and it will not happen. There are other countries in the world that will continue to produce sugar at a rate that is much less than we can now or in the foreseeable future. So Guyanese have got to wake up and see the waste of the country's resources by its government. It concerns every Guyanese.
By its governments, including this corrupt, racist PPP regime. One can also argue that under the coalition, billions of dollars were wasted into the sugar industry. Billions of dollars to rescue an industry that is dead. The coalition knew it. Sugar industry dead, but yet they pumped billions of dollars into the sugar industry, and merely crumbs went to the bauxite industry. Those out there who carried that nation for all those years, while the PPP guys were burning sugar canes, burning the cane fields, destroying Guyana. The bauxite industry carried that country for over a decade. Anyways, I just thought I mentioned that. You mentioned, Mr. Arjun, Skeldon Estate. Skeldon Estate is dead. Remember the Skeldon Sugar Factory that Jack Dale wasted $200+ million. $200+ million on a white elephant. I don't know. Lots and lots of waste of monies throughout the country with these vagabonds, these criminals like Jack Dale and Irfan and the pack of them. You mentioned that guy from Gaisuko, Says Narayan Singh. He is the turnaround expert. He has promised to turn Gaisuko around. I don't know what sort of turnaround he's doing at Gaisuko. I don't want to know. I just don't want to know.
He hasn't.
Yeah,
and it should be noted that we have to pay for the Skeldon Sugar Factory. It was
Yes.
done on a loan. So it's our burden to pay it back.
Good. Let's go straight to. I wanted Miss Shellon Washington to take the first jam at this, but we'll have Mr. Caesar first. Whenever you guys are in Guyana, trust me, there's always a house for you guys. There's a house for you, Miss Washington. There's a house for Mr. Caesar. There's a house for Mr. Derek Arjun, but I will pass on it. That's okay. I will pass on it. 52 of these houses. Big success story, according to the PPP regime. Success story. Look at these houses, or you want to call them houses. Look at what's going on. No proper infrastructure, nothing at all. Mr. Caesar, take the first hit of this, please, sir.
Well, listen, Mark, we have 83,000 square miles, right, in Guyana, and most of it, right, it's not populated. So I do not understand, first thing, why these houses have to be so on top of each other. And number two, you can see that they are cheaply built. They are of no size. I guess everybody is either a male and a female and one child, or a male and a female and two children. But we know in Guyana that we have large families. There are some people with 5 kids, there are some people with 6 kids. How does this apply to them? And then let's say, Mark, we line up, you're in one home, I am in another home, Miss Washington and Councilor Arjun in another home. I can't sneeze, because then Shellon gonna be like, oh, that's Wayne sneeze. Or if you sneeze, Mark, she'll be like, oh, that's Mark, because we're so much on top of each other. Where do our children play? Where is the space to the little kitchen garden, Shellon? You know the kitchen garden that we talk about. It's an African tradition. And not just African. The other ethnic groups have caught on to it. Everybody have a kitchen garden. Where's the space to that? You know? Are we going to put up fences, Mark? Because if we put up fences, I mean, oh my goodness, what would that look like?
There's no
space. So this is a waste of money. You know, Councilor Arjun was talking about waste of money. Here is another waste of money. All I can see here is a colored collage of little squares. Okay, there's nothing going on here. And you're telling me that Guyanese are supposed to move into those. And I understand that Jerry Govaya had a big part to play, and this was his project. Well, Jerry Govaya, you move into one of these with your family, and then the Guyanese people are going to follow suit. Because this is utter disrespect that we're looking at right here. Utter disrespect. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you.
Or Shellon, if you want to comment.
Thank you, sir. So I don't know about this. You guys wouldn't want to live next to me, because pot gonna fall on the ground, Posey gonna fall on the ground, because I'm gonna just open a window and just throw my stuff outside over in y'all area. All manner of things gonna happen. This is a shame. It's a disgrace. On a serious note, though, Miss Washington, what is your take on this I pass to Guyanese by the PPP regime, especially with these homes now?
My concern is that the people of Guyana has been defrauded. You know, I remember I still own that property. There was one of the first properties I purchased in the United States. And I purchased a shed that looks exactly like these houses that the government of Guyana built. And I remember back then, I probably paid $2,500 US for that shed. And it looks just about the same. It had windows, it has a door, it has roof. It was made basically to look like a house, even though it was just a storage shed. And my concern is that the people of Guyana were defrauded, because my understanding is that those sheds cost about $25,000 US. And that's a shame, because I would have paid a mere $2,500. And even now, if you take into account inflation, a shed of that nature wouldn't cost more than about $3,000 or $3,500 if you wanted to purchase it. Looking at the square footage, I would say any Guyanese who is purchasing one of these is being defrauded because of the price it's being sold at. 25,000 US is equivalent to what, $5 million in Guyana dollars, and that is ridiculous because this is the size, the dimension, the quality of a shed you pay for in a developed country like the United States. And then you come to a country that the world references as a developing country, not as a developed country, but as a developing country, previously referred to as a third world country. But then they abolished the word third world country, and now we refer to as a developing country. And you look at what is being offered by a corrupt government. I think the government is the people there that keeps Guyana suppressed and keeps Guyana as being referred to as a developing country, when in reality, we should be placed right up there with those nations which are developed because of the resources we have. We have a wealth of natural resources. We have gold, we have bauxite, we have oil. Yet, in a country like Guyana, a corrupt government is taking something which is akin to a shed in the United States, put posts on the bottom, because that's the only difference I can see. The foundation which they put is, standing posts, and then the stairs. That's the only difference between these sheds that the government is giving out and calling homes, and a shed in the United States. And I think people, you're being defrauded. This is fraud to the highest level. If you want to talk about fraud charges, the government of Guyana need to be charged with fraud. This is fraud. You take something equivalent or akin to a mere storage shed and you sell it to the population because they're ignorant, they're uneducated, they have no knowledge of what they're getting into, something that is really flimsy, that if a hurricane should hit Guyana, these things are going to go flying in the sky. Those people would be left with no housing. And the sad part is there's no housing insurance in Guyana. In Guyana, your home is not insured against natural disasters, against flooding, against windstorm. It's not insured. So if for some reason, an act of God should come through Guyana, these people are in trouble. They'll be left without house, and they'll be forced to continue paying on a mortgage, which they shouldn't even be paying for. As far as I see it, the government of Guyana should just literally give this out for free because it's of no or very, very low value. It's not worth 25,000 US dollars.
Certainly doesn't worth that. 56 minutes after 9 o'clock. If you're now joining us, good evening. Let's head over to Mr. Derek Arjun. Your take on these PPP-style mansions in Guyana.
Mark, one questions our seriousness about development, especially the PPP. How could you be serious about developing your country and erect houses like these? Even in the 60s and 70s, when we didn't have the resources that we did, we've built better houses. There's so many deficiencies here. And I agree that this is fraudulent. It's also very short-sighted on the part of this government. We've been independent, I think it's 56 or 57 years. And look what we are doing. And I say we because we are responsible for what the PPP is meting out to our people. I think Shalon just said that we shouldn't pay that amount of money. These houses should be demolished. What does a family of two do with this size house? It is beyond shameful. So we have to be serious. Do we want a nation that we could be proud of, or do we want a nation in which we have the oppressed lorded over by the wealthy and privileged? I want to draw your attention to Mr. Jagdio's statement that if he had to debate Aubrey Norton, he would have to be educating him. Well, I would like to say to Mr. Jagdio, if you are educating Mr. Norton, could you tell me how you justify, under your tutelage, the building of these small useless houses? How do you justify that? And it goes to the entire Guyanese government. And furthermore, our people must demand better. They deserve better. So, in the end, these things ought to be knocked down and better put in place because Guyanese, whether they be Amerindians, East Indians, Africans, mixed, deserve better and they must be given better.
Deserve better, must be given better. I just want our listeners and, of course, you guys to check this out. When Irfan Ali was just less than a year, he became Minister of Housing under the PPP regime. 31 years old, and look at what he owned back then. Took this house from Gaisuko. Then look at his swimming pool. I just want our listeners to take a look at his swimming pool, or what they call pool house. Take a look at his pool house and take a look at these houses. Again, take a look at these houses, then take a look at his pool house. Are these people, and yet these are the people who claim that they love Guyana and they love Guyanese? Look how they want Guyanese to live. But Irfan Ali wouldn't go with his two kids and his wife to live in something like this. No, but he wants Auntie Drupati, Auntie Kamala, Auntie Kamnawati, Auntie Vimnawati, and Michelle, you name it, all of them. Bunty King and his family, Chanel Wills, all of them, they want to go there. Ian Williams, GT Root Girl, well, GT Root Girl broke up the house in one night. But yet he and his family wouldn't go there at all. Look at the house that he got when he was 31 years old as a Minister of Housing. Not only that, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this. Jack Deo's houses. Take a look at Jack Deo's houses. I don't know, guys. I don't know who these people are fooling. Wayne, your take on what you just saw there. Irfan Ali's pool house, Jack Deo's houses. Your take.
Well, listen, Mark, that's called the lavish living of the inner circle of the PPPC, right? As they try to develop, I guess, a caste system in Guyana where, you have the high-level people with the massive houses and the mansions and everything else. And then you treat the normal, everyday Guyanese to those little dog kennels that, they would have erected there. So listen, and Mr. Arjun said it best. We have to demand more. The people of Guyana need to demand more. They need to set their levels, because I was watching the comments, when these houses were posted, I think today or yesterday. And I read through all the comments, and I was disturbed by some of the comments that I saw, to be honest. Some people was saying something is better than nothing. No, people, you cannot settle for this. Sometimes you have to take 10 steps backward in order to take one forward. You cannot continue to accept this. This is substandard work to start off with. I think Shalon was talking about the legs and how these homes look. Look, if you even wanted to build out, Mark, or add another level, which Guyanese always like to have their two-story, what they call the upstairs and the downstairs. You cannot do that with these structures that are here. The land that would have been distributed with these structures is not a normal house lot. You got to give things to people. You want to do something for somebody, give them something that they can actually, apply their own vision to. Who tells the government that Guyanese wants to live in a pig pen? This is atrocious, Mark. And look at Irfan Ali. Look at his mansion. Look at his pool house. You put these two things together, it's worth more than that whole village that we just looked at there.
Absolutely.
This is ridiculous.
Look at the houses. Thank you, Mr. Caesar. And Mr. Arjun alluded to this. Built during the PNC time. This is out in South. during Carifesta time and so forth, when the nation had no billions of dollars of oil or nothing. Look at the homes built under the PNC compared to what we are seeing now. Miss Washington, you're familiar with some of those beautiful houses out in Amelia's Ward and so forth out there in Linden.
Yes, absolutely. The houses that were built, especially in Retrieve and certain parts in Linden, they were very spacious. They looked nothing like that. They were at least, if it was one story, it was high, and if it was two-story, there was the bottom and then the second floor. I've never seen anything of this nature in Linden. This is a first, and even the housing scheme that under the PPP that was built, the housing scheme has what we would reference as condos or joined houses, and it doesn't look anything of this sort. I tell you, this has to be one of the biggest fraud committed against Guyana. And this was what you get exactly when you put a government in that them themselves were accused of fraud. They attempt to defraud the nation. And I hope Guyanese can wake up and recognize that what they're getting, it's not a deal. Don't you dare think that you're getting a deal. My understanding, if the government was building this and said, okay, we're going to give this free to all Guyanese who doesn't have a house, you don't have a place to live. This is the cheapest thing we can build, which is probably 3,500 US. We're going to build you something cheap and we're going to give it out for free. But to build this and to sell it or even make anybody put a penny towards it, it's ridiculous. It's disgraceful to our country. Guyana, you go to Linden and look at all of the houses, like Mark is saying, that was built under the PNC. You will not find anything of this subpar, substandard nature. You will find really beautiful, we will call them condominiums in the United States or townhouses, because the housing scheme in Linden housing scheme, those scheme houses were pretty good. It's built with concrete, it's strong, it's made to endure any type of weather. But as you can see with these sheds, it looks like it was built with wooden sheds. So if a windstorm should pass through Guyana, those people are in trouble. And, it's like I said, we do not have housing insurance in Guyana to insure your property. So anybody signs up for these things and have to pay a cost for it, I apologize to you, because you're taking on a liability and something that will endanger your life. Because if this collapses in a hurricane, if a hurricane decides to visit Guyana and it collapses, chances are the lives of those people who will be occupying those things will be in jeopardy. So I would even encourage Guyanese not to take it, because you're putting your own life at risk by even deciding to go occupy these very flimsy structure that was built by the Guyanese government. And I don't know if they're selling it to you guys. I don't know what is the transaction in terms of, but I know it couldn't cost 25,000 US. That for sure, I know.
7 minutes after 10 o'clock. Before we go, I still have a couple questions more. We are hearing that the Gladstone family out there in the UK, Gladstone was once a prime minister, one of those former prime ministers of the UK. His family members and so forth owned plantations in Guyana and other parts of the world. They're apologizing and they're giving out 100,000 pounds and so forth and so on. Mr. Arjun, what is your take on that little crumbs of money, 100,000 pounds and an apology? Your take, sir.
It is a late and insufficient apology. Nevertheless, the fact that they're doing it, adds to the call for reparations and could be used in the arguments being made in Guyana and elsewhere for reparations. One would hope what they're doing spurs other former slave owners in Britain to follow suit. As you know, in his book, Capitalism and Slavery, Eric Williams has maintained that slavery was the basis of almost every fortune in England. So those who have money in England need to recognize the source of it and do more than what the Gladstones are doing. Not only apologize, but put substantial funds um, into some kind of settlement fund to repay slaves, or more properly former slaves in the Caribbean. So it's insufficient, but nonetheless, it could be taken as a boost to the cause for reparations.
It's an insult. 100 pounds. I don't know, an apology, and then flying around and oh, there. It's an insult. 100 pounds is nothing. Absolutely not. Of course, I love 100 pounds, but for an entire nation of people, their ancestors destroyed as a result of these covetous, these barbaric individuals, now coming to say that they are I don't know. Wayne Caesar, your take, sir, on that particular subject.
Well, listen, Mark, I'm not going to say that the funds that they would have given out is sufficient. It's not nearly as sufficient. But it can springboard a conversation, as Mr. Arjun would have said. You know, a conversation when it comes to reparations for the people. And listen, it doesn't matter what you would have given out. I don't think that any one person or any group can ever compensate for what our ancestors / foreparents would have gone through. There's nothing that can really satisfy that from a monetary perspective, I believe. But to actually, have, someone, finally wake up and determine that, hey, this needs to be done. Although the value of money that they've placed on the table, again, I would say it's not even close. It's not even a drop in the bucket.
Right.
But the fact that the thought, they would have thought about it, it shows. And like I think Mr. Arjun would have said, every family, these rich families in England or London or the UK, let's call it that, when they look at what they have, we would have always said that these people would have taken everything away from us. And it is the truth, right? When they look at their wealth would have came from the enslavement of our foreparents. Henceforth, they would have taken something away from us. How you replace that? I am not sure you can replace that from a monetary perspective. I say it again. I am not sure. I think it would take some admitting. It would take a lot of things to replenish that. But to see that the attempt has been made and it can be part of a broader conversation, this can actually be a start. Let's see what happens.
Thank you so much, sir. Let's see what happens. We are going to pull the curtains down because I know Miss Washington had a very busy day. Called your office several times to invite you on tonight. Couldn't get you. Your secretary said that you're busy. Clients upon clients upon clients upon clients at the Washington's law firm out there in Brooklyn. Mr. Arjun, I know you've also had a very busy day. One question I wanted to ask you, though, Mr. Arjun, concerning this particular situation here. Maybe never before have you heard about something like this, where a man that is wanted for a shooting that provides documentation showing he has been outside of the U.S. during the course of that crime, yet the police is saying that he is still wanted because you got to say who uses vehicle and all manner of things. What's happening here, sir?
Another example of the gross incompetence of our police force. If this man was outside the U.S., that could have been if he said that and it was easily verifiable. Then the police had no basis to issue a wanted bulletin. But then our police force has been wanting in many respects, even in the simplest things. And when you demoralize and cause a police force to become non-functional, you'll have this kind of oddities. We have to get a professional police force again. Almost every week you hear about something that the police does that is not consistent with standard police procedures, and much of it rests on the way the government is administering the police. We need competent officers. We need police officers who can do their work without being told what to do by a political directorate. When we need better resources, we need better training, and we need a commitment to protect and serve all Guyanese, not Guyanese with money or not Guyanese from a particular ethnicity. Our police force, I remember growing up in Guyana, was one that you could call upon in every instance, regardless of who you were. Now it's something totally different. So this particular incident just shows how low we are falling, and we will continue to fall until there are serious reforms to the police department in Guyana.
Well said, Mr. Derek Arjun. I know I have a final question for you before you go. You'll tell us a little more about this meeting coming up, this public meeting with the leader of the opposition, Aubrey Compton Norton, on Thursday. But before we get to you with that, Ms. Shellon Washington, I think I've exhausted. No, I have not. I want to ask you this here. I'm sure it was in the news. Postmortem conducted, and it says that this person died as a result of suicide. The person who should have been a suspect was not picked up. It was not questioned to get some more information, to see whether there's some holes in the story, inconsistencies, and so forth. What is your take on just one pathologist in Guyana, operated by the government and the police force, and no independent pathologist at all?
When I read this story, I became a little bit concerned, and I saw the public outcry and some of the statements that was being made on Facebook regarding all the circumstances surrounding this young woman's death. It seems very suspicious. She died under very suspicious circumstances. I would completely agree with that. And then I look at the report regarding what the boyfriend said, and about the text messages coming from her phone to his phone, and about where he was, and about him going and visiting the location where this young woman was prior to her, or immediately prior to her death. And I have a lot of questions, but me having a legal mind is quite different from the way the Guyana Police Force thinks, because as you can see, the Guyana Police Force is very reckless and very incompetent, and they don't have the right folks in the position to conduct thorough investigation. So what they do, they take things at face value, especially if it involves somebody in power or in a position of power, or have a connection with somebody in power, or they have money. In this case, when I saw the pictures showing the way she was left hanging, and what we do in the United States when something of this nature happened, the first thing the police go to try to do is understand who the victim was. Try to collect information about the victim. They take pictures of the crime scene, and then they try to collect as much information about the victim. Now, I don't see the Guyana police did any of that, because first of all, you have to understand whether this girl was the type of person that was likely to commit suicide. Me looking at the facts, it seems to me as if the man that she was in the relationship actually murdered her, and then he set the stage as if it was a suicide, and then he left. And then, because if you look at the way the communication was going, and, I believe we have cell towers in Guyana too, and the phone company could put the cell phone exactly where it was at any particular time. So if the man that she was in the relationship with was actually at the same place with her at the time this incident was happening, the phone company could determine that. But the Guyana Police Force, they are lazy and incompetent. They choose not to do any investigation, but they just relied on what they saw at the scene that, oh, it looks like she committed suicide. And then they have one pathologist. I don't know how competent the pathologist is, but compression on a person's neck does not necessarily equal strangulation by hanging themselves. It could have been that they were aided in the strangulation by somebody else. But I do understand they're claiming that there's no other marks of violence on the body, which given, but does that rule out somebody taking a rope and wrapping it around this young woman's neck and strangling her? Does it rule that out? Does it rule a scenario of that nature out? No, absolutely not. Because even if they're claiming that she died by strangulation or she died by hanging, there are other means of which she could have died that way. Therefore, the police should have investigated just to make sure that the story that they were told by the man that she was in the relationship with was a truthful story. Because if it happens that he actually murdered her, we will never know because the police just opened and closed the book. They didn't bother to investigate. They didn't bother to check. They didn't bother to go collect data from the cell phone company and say, hey, could you tell us whether or not you could put this man at the same place that this woman was at the time of death? No, they didn't do any of that. And then I don't know if the postmortem accurately tells what the time of death was. They should have at least investigated to see where this man was at the time of death occurred. I don't think they did any investigation, and I think this is wrong. And the family of this young woman should go get an independent postmortem. They should press to get some further investigation to determine whether or not this was indeed a murder or a suicide. Because all of the factors, when I look at the facts, it's pointing in the direction that they might have been foul play. But the person who did this would have been clever, knowing that the police in Guyana, they don't investigate. They saw text messages. They didn't even bother to check to see if the man's fingerprint was on her phone. They didn't bother to check to see whether or not the man was using her phone to text himself and then reply. They didn't bother to check all of these things to determine whether or not they have a case or there's no case. And I think that's gross negligence, and the family should press to have something done. You're muted, Mark.
Thank you so much. Well said, Miss Washington. Well said. A lot of people are of the view that whomever the sweet guy is, or man, or whatever they call him, should have been detained and questioned to see whether there's some inconsistencies in his stories. People have identified some inconsistencies in his story. The police have ignored him. They haven't picked him up. They haven't questioned him. And the pathologist ruled that it's a suicide and story done. I don't know, Mr. Wayne Caesar, please, your closing remarks, sir.
Well, I would want to touch on this for my closing remarks, and I do agree with everything that Miss Washington would have uttered there. This young lady, she's young, she's beautiful, she looked like she was a person full of energy, based on what her family is saying. You know, they don't believe that she would have committed suicide. It doesn't look like if she would have committed suicide. It just looked as if this is another attempt by someone who is a part or is tied to the government. This is another attempt at a full cover up here. Again, the PPPC should be ashamed of themselves. One pathologist across an entire country, oil producing nation, a country with one of the fastest growing economies, one pathologist. It would be good if they could have had at least 5 understudies below him so that he can teach them and bring them up, because sometimes, and Shalon would have said this, the family should call for an independent investigation, an independent pathologist to also look at this body. But where are you going to go? You'll have to go all the way out to Trinidad to probably get one to come in, and that is going to be very costly. You see, the government understand these things. That's why they can take the positions that they take when it comes down to these issues, because yes, this needed to be investigated more. This young man needed to, at least, because we're talking about someone being found deceased here. And it could, when you find someone deceased, you have to investigate it further, whether it was a murder or not. And he should have been sitting for at least 72 hours so that they can get, a grip as to what really would have occurred here. Because I certainly don't feel like if that young woman would have committed suicide. And I would definitely want to see this investigated, further.
Well said, Mr. Wayne. He's no independent pathologist there in Guyana at all. In 2002, there was the death of three persons, the murder, sorry, of three persons out there on the quarantine. A guy by the name of Azad Bacchus and his nephews. One guy, I think, was 14 or 15 years old. They were murdered by BAS, the Berbice Anti-Smuggling Squad, and PBP operatives. There was an independent pathologist that came in from Trinidad and Tobago who conducted the autopsy, and it showed that they were murdered. There were other times that pathologists were in Guyana to conduct independent PM. The last time we heard of one with the Henry boys as well, but they weren't allowed to do their job, mind you. And so, family members, if they don't have the money, then that's it. They'll just have to give up. I spoke with some family members of that young lady who they claim that committed suicide, Nguyen Kirk, and the father just basically said, look, there's really not much that they can do. They don't have the monies. They don't have nothing. He just wants to bury his daughter. Unfortunately, he has no other choice but to bury his daughter on Wednesday. I don't know. This is so sad. Absolutely sad. And again, condolences go out to the entire family members of that beautiful young lady who has died under questionable circumstances. Mr. Derek Arjun, your closing remarks, please. And I know you may want to add something to that. But in your closing remarks, also, please tell us something about this event you have coming up or your organization has coming up this Thursday.
Well, I wouldn't comment too much on the unfortunate death of that young lady. There are holes in the theories offered about her death. And it's unfortunate that Guyana is operating in such a way that we don't value life. And therefore, this young lady will be buried without a proper explanation as to why she died. As we continue to devalue life under this government, there's that danger that everybody's life becomes devalued, and the result is that we don't look upon each other as we ought to, and that could be very dangerous. So she's another victim, but in a way, all of us are victims of this continued dehumanization of the Guyanese population. Perhaps the best example being the Madia 20. We have a COI. We don't know the terms of reference, and those commissioners were selected by the government and not by broad-based society activists. Again, we are, when we value life, no matter who it is, then we're building a sound, stable, and strong society. Um, On to this Thursday, August 24th event at which Mr. Norton will be speaking. Look, we're inviting everyone. Guyana has a strong ethnic divide, and this event is being held in an area where mostly our East Indian supporters are, and presumptively there are supporters of the PBP, and indeed some have said they're going to come and protest. Now, that's your constitutional right, especially in this country, which is a pillar of liberal democracy. Come and protest. Um, we want you also to participate. Talk to Mr. Norton, ask questions, um, engage in dialogue. The theme is building dialogue, building dialogue to building dialogue about to cross a divide for the purpose of unity and progress. So we expect uncomfortable questions. We expect questions that we might not like, but the essence of democracy is to allow people to express varying views. It's how you deal with those varying views that will determine the quality of the society. Unfortunately, in Guyana, that quality is not being promoted because the PPP is insistent on having a society with one opinion. So we look forward to everyone coming out. Just one caution: if you're going to engage in discourse, we expect you to respect the rules of discourse. That is, you say what you have to say, the speaker says what he has to say, and if you can find common ground that night or thereafter, let's do that. But don't be disruptive, don't be disrespectful. We do not expect that, and we will not tolerate that. So we look forward to seeing each and every one, regardless of your political and ideological leaning, to be there. Thanks, Mark. The
Thank
best.
you so much, Mr. Derek Arjun. Thank you so much, Mr. Wayne Caesar. Always willing and ready to hop on. I want to see Wayne debate Jack Deal. No match, right, Wayne? Absolutely no match there at all. Quickly, though,
Well,
before we go ahead, Mr. Caesar, go ahead, sir.
well, you know something, Mark, you just opened a can of worms there.
Yeah.
I think the Marriott is about to be sold off, right? You see
Oh,
that,
yeah.
right? With
Yeah.
one man making the decision to sell an asset that belongs to the taxpayers of Guyana. How can he debate? Like I said before, there's no grounds. Jack Dio can't debate with anybody, even from an economical perspective. I mean, Shalon is a lawyer. Still think she'll wallop him from an
I still think,
economic
come on.
perspective. He's
E-
just
Even Beetlejuice will beat Jack Deal in a debate. You know who Beetlejuice is, right? Yeah, who, me?
yes, of course. Everybody know Beetlejuice cartoon.
Who
Yeah,
me? Who me? Miss
me.
Washington, reparation. What's your take on that company from that family, Gladstone family, going into Guyana and apologizing? And we see Irfan and all these people putting crumbs into African Guyanese organizations now, and they're just hopping on the stage. Your take on all of that?
You know, my take on it is not very pretty, it's very ugly because I believe what happened to Africans from Africa, our ancestors, it was very brutal. And I think slavery is one of the greatest form of theft, larceny in our history. And what I personally believe is Europeans stole from us. They stole our wealth. They stole the bodies of young Africans and they used it for their own benefit, financial gain. So when it comes to reparation, what I believe should happen is Europeans, all those Europeans who took, who stole, because it's not just a taking, It wasn't just force, it was theft. Let's name it for what it is. Even all the artifacts and everything that they took from Africa, they stole it. So what I personally believe should happen, if anybody wants to go and say, well, let's have reparation, let's restore what was taken, what was stolen. Give all the wealth back. Be for real. Give all, donate all of it to African organizations for the benefit of Africans. And don't take anything to the University of Guyana. The University of Guyana doesn't just have Africans. It have Indians. It have all different pool of people there. And if you really want to be for real and engage in any form of reparation, let's start with the ancestors of the slaves that you own. You know the names that you gave to them. We can search and find them. There's records. Find those ancestors. Find the ancestry for those slaves that you own and give the reparation to them. Don't take anything to the University of Guyana. Those Afro-Guyanese will never see it. Give it to the people who have survived. Trace the ancestry, because that's possible in this day and age, especially what names you give to them. We can easily determine that and take all of your wealth. Don't just take some of it, sir. Don't take 100,000. Come on, look at what you did. Destroyed an entire group of people, took their names, took their history, took everything from them, took their wealth. That's generation upon generation worth of wealth is gone, forever gone. So if you want to be serious about engaging in reparation, they ought to restore all their wealth back to us. And when that happens, then I'm going to be satisfied. Until Europeans are serious and take all of that wealth and go start from scratch, because you're supposed to start the same way you made us start after slavery was ended, with nothing. So if they want to truly engage in reparation, take all of your wealth and donate it for the survivors of all those people who their ancestors were slaves and slaved for you and built your wealth. Take all your wealth and donate it, because that's what you're supposed to do if you want to really talk about reparation.
Well said, Miss Washington. And the Gladstone family, the slave masters, generations, and out there in the UK are heading to Guyana. And I agree with Miss Washington. Don't start at UG with £100,000. But then again, Guyanese already. Everybody's going to be connected to Gladstone now, because my great grandfather was Philbert Gladstone. I just made that up. Then they get Wayne's great grandfather, Terence Gladstone, and then Derek Gladstone Sr., Shellon Gladstone, and everybody will be Gladstone, because we'll all be glad. But on a serious note, I agree with Shellon that start with those estates that they own, and they give those people names in Guyana and so forth. Develop those people. Gosh, 36 minutes after 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, sorry. Mr. Wayne Caesar, our public accountant, thank you so much, sir, as always. Derek Arjun, thank you so much on your inaugural appearance here on 107.1 FM. Don't be a stranger, and all the best with that function, that town hall meeting here in Queens. We will carry it live right here on 107.1 FM. Thank you so much, Miss Washington. Give my regards to your staff at Washington's law firm there in Brooklyn, Utica Avenue. I got to stop by for breakfast or lunch maybe this Thursday as I head off to that meeting, town hall meeting, myself and Wayne and Gavin and the whole crew. We're heading down there to that town hall meeting in Queens. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. And thank you to all your listeners out there too. Good night to everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
All right, a packed house tonight, right? Quickly, and I also want to thank you guys, all of you, for tuning in here this evening on 107.1. Before we go, a little bit of a sad news. Shrimpy, Collie Allen, also known as DJ Shrimpy, the guy that entertains us during the weekends and also during the pandemic. He was there. Many DJs we've had. DJ Shrimpy is one of them. His sister-in-law died today. She recovered from cancer, and then, I don't want to give my mouth much liberty on that, but she just fell ill, and that's it. Again, Sharon is gone. I recall Sharon. I've known Sharon for many years. She was there at a member of the Guyana Prison Service. She was one of those senior officers, I believe, probably retired as a chief. She has always been respectful to all of us there. And when I say all of us back then, you know what I mean by that, because I was one of the occupants there as a political prisoner at Camp Street Prison. And I can say that Sharon was one of those good prison officers. May her soul rest in peace, and condolences to her entire family. For now, my name is Mark Benshaw. I say goodbye for now. God bless you, and God bless our beautiful country. Pray for the Guyana Police Force. They're corrupt at every level. Not all of them, quite a lot of them are corrupt. Until tomorrow, as I've said, same place, same time.
So, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.